Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Angie, and this is the Fatal Encounter. Before we begin, I would like to issue a warning. Today's case is quite going to be disturbing, and it's going to be involving some of the worst things done to humankind. So, if you need more information on what is discussed here today, please refer to the online sources for more clarity. Let's dive in. So when we hear about churches, we understand that this concerns the Christianity aspects of it and all about that. But what about churches that turn to cults? 448 murders, 613 missing, 72 survivors, and 36 suspects. What do we say about that? Normally, when a coastal town in Kenya is mentioned, what comes to my mind is the tourism aspect of it, or the sandy beaches, tropical climate, diverse cultures, and really warm people who live around there. So in Malindi, it's not different from any other coastal towns in Kenya. But today we are not discussing about the tourist aspect of it. We are discussing about the Shakahola massacre that happened there and was just recently discovered. So in early April 2023, a man reported that his wife and daughter were missing to the police. He stated that they had left Nairobi, Kenya to join the Good News International Ministries in Kilifi County. This is a distance of about 800 kilometers, but they did not return. And by sheer of luck, the police took him seriously and decided to investigate more on the issue. And I say this because in Kenya, that is not always the case. The police, they're not going to be just as that friendly. So we can say this, I'm saying this as a Kenyan. So when the police went to investigate, they found that in this place there were emaciated people, shallow graves, and this was all over the place. Just imagine you're investigating two missing people and you end up discovering a mass murder. At the time, 15 people were rescued, but 4 died before they could reach the hospital. And as weeks went by, the police were discovering more bodies and more survivors. And this arose so many questions about what really happened. This ranch was about 800 acres or about 3.2 kilometers squared. And within it, there were hundreds and hundreds of shallow graves found. Some graves had multiple victims. For example, one of the graves had 6 people, another had 12 children, another had 5 members of the same family. That included father, mother, and their 3 kids, all buried in these mass graves that were found. This is an entire family that was wiped out. It's not normal. So, what really happened? Some of the people found in these graves had been buried alive for around 3 days before they were found, and they were at the brink of death. So, who was behind all this? What was really going on here? Paul Ntenge Mackenzie, a man from Kenya, relocated to the coastal region in 1990s, where he formerly was a taxi driver from 1997 to 2003. He was a member of another church, but he was later kicked out because he was having the extremist sermons. And he later founded his own church, the Good News International Ministries, where he amassed thousands and thousands of followers at the time. This church was normal at first, but as of 2010, this is when things started to take a turn. The self-proclaimed pastor started telling his congregants that he could personally speak to God, that the end of times were nearing. And this was really bad because he was encouraging his followers to take their kids out of school, discard their government documents, and avoid seeking medical assistance because this was involved, according to him, this was involving the demonic aspect. And this led to a fallout that he had with some of church leaders. And this man really never used force to convince people to get into his church. He was just really persuasive. So some of the victims here were learned, successful, or they had successful careers. So we can say they were like social workers, air hostesses, business people, and even other army personnel. We cannot say these victims were primitive or anything, but this guy knew what or how or when to say things that he got these people to believe in him. Things in the church were not easy, or it was not so easy to get out of the church. It is also reported in 2016, some of the members sold their own properties that added up to 20 million Kenya shillings. So this is around 200K dollars at the time. And they gave it all to Mackenzie, who bought more properties, cars, and even started a radio station that he would use to spread his teachings. It's ironic, right? He preached that the end of times were nearing, but he still invested. He was trying to tell these people the end of time is coming, but he still was investing. In 2017, he had more run-ins with the law severally, where he and his wife were charged in promoting extremism, and he was acquitted. Another time in the same year, he was also charged in denying children their rights to healthcare and education. And during this incident, it is reported that several children had lost their lives due to lack of healthcare. And 93 children from his church were also rescued. Oh, and guess what? He was acquitted again because there was not enough evidence. I guess this is corruption, or because this is rampant in Kenya. So how could this lead to freeing a man who was a criminal? The survivors stated that during their stay at the ranch, they were not allowed to communicate or interact with outsiders, and they were also forced to starve so that they would die and meet Jesus. And this would only be achieved if they did it together at the ranch. And children were not spared. Children were locked in huts for prolonged periods of time without food or water, and even some were wrapped in blankets and buried alive. The people who went against his plans or changed their minds or even took too long to die, they were allegedly killed by men hired by Mackenzie, because it was like they are disturbing his plans. Some of the victims survived because they ran away. Salema Masha was one of the victims, and after 7 days of fasting with her kids in the forest, she could not take it any longer. Something in her heart told her this was not right. You just have to act right. You have so many things to do now. So one day she took her kids and they walked several kilometers away from the ranch, to get to a safe space, because at the ranch was not safe. And at this ranch was where her own husband died. There are so many things that Mackenzie subjected his followers to, and some of these things were against the Constitution of Kenya and the human rights. One of them was starvation, isolation, lack of education, destruction of identity, brutality against children, and murder, just to name a few. The post-mortem conducted on the corpses found indicated that 219 of the victims died due to starvation. Among them were children around 1.5 years to 10 years old. 39 died from asphyxiation, 14 from blunt force trauma, 115 remained unascertained. Please keep in mind some of these numbers are going to change because the investigation is still ongoing and more recovery is still taking place. 613 people are still missing, and Paul Mthenge Mackenzie was arrested in 2023, and he was sentenced to 18 months in prison for illegal distribution of films and operating a film studio without a license. His charges and those of his accomplices were later upgraded to terrorism, 191 counts of murder, 238 counts of manslaughter, committing acts of terror, child cruelty, and torture. And the hearing of this case started on the 8th of July 2024. And as of now, I cannot really say what his punishment is going to be or what the outcome of the case will be. There are about 90 witnesses who will testify against him, and as well as mountain of evidence that is also available here in YouTube. And something I would also love to mention, Mackenzie himself did not take part in the starving. In fact, he had a menu on what he would eat. And even after all these atrocities, some of the survivors showed him support by starving themselves again. He even had the guts to complain that the food situation in prison was not favorable and that he was hungry. Ironic, right? The positive aspect of this case is that survivors are adapting back to their normal life. They suffered mental, physical, and emotional torture. Stigmatization for their involvement with this case is also one of the negative things that is taking place. It's haunting them till today. People from different social, economic, and educational background, they were all in this church. They were all in this same situation. This means this can fall on anyone, regardless of their background. This includes you and me. Falling prey to such cults can be quite easy. And please be kind and keep in mind that these are some of the cults warning that you can look about. You can look absolute authoritarianism, zero tolerance for criticism or questions, lack of financial transparency, unreasonable fear about the outside world, exclusivity in faith, deceptive recruitment tactics, isolation of members, severe penalties for leaving the group, abuse of members, and a belief that the leader is always right. This is not always the case. If you see that and that this is something that you see in a church, then this is a warning sign. What angers me the most is that Paul Mackenzie was able to get away with his crime earlier. And if he was caught and faced the consequences, so many lives would have been saved. As we conclude, I would like to thank you all for supporting me, and please like and subscribe. If there are any additional information that I have not mentioned today, please state them in the comment section down below. And I would love to mention that I am pleased to have you here with me, and thank you. Bye.